Some betrayals don't come from enemies, sometimes they come wrapped in tinsel and called family. Christmas Eve in Chicago always smelled like cinnamon, roasted turkey, and expensive cologne, the kind of scent that clings to you long after the last guest leaves. That night, it clung to my pride too. Trevor's penthouse wasn't just a home, it was a showroom. Floor to ceiling windows framed Lake Michigan like a slab of dark glass dotted with light. A tree tall enough to challenge the ceiling stood in the corner, dripping with gold ornaments and white lights. The chandelier above it looked like it belonged in a museum. And me? I moved through it like background noise. I was 62. The kind of tired you can't fix with sleep hands that remembered every winter, knees that complained when you stood too long, shoulders that held decades of, "I'll handle it." But I didn't mind. Not at first. Because it was Christmas. I'd been up since dawn, basting the bird, stirring cranberry sauce, whipping potatoes, trimming green beans, slicing beets until my fingertips looked bruised. I baked pumpkin pie from scratch, the one Trevor used to beg for when he was 8 and missing his front teeth. By 8 o'clock, the guests arrived in waves. 30 people. Family, friends, co-workers Trevor liked to impress. Coats piled by the entryway. Laughter in the hallway. Music low and tasteful, like everything else in the place. Trevor stood near the windows, tailored shirt, perfect hair, holding court like a man born under spotlights. Tiffany floated around taking photos, tree, food, skyline, curating a life that looked effortless. Nobody photographed the man in the kitchen. That was fine. I didn't come for applause. I came because he was my son, and because for 3 years I'd been playing a role I thought would protect him. The aging dad who needed help. The father grateful his successful boy had room for him. That role finally tore apart that night. The first time you realize your child sees you as a burden, it feels like swallowing glass. Around 9:30, I carried a tray of wine glasses into the living room. My cousin Marlene reached for one and whispered, "Ray, sit down. You've been on your feet all night." Before I could answer, Trevor's voice cut through the room. "Dad, ice. We're running low." It wasn't even mean. That was the problem. It was casual, automatic, like I was part of the catering package. I froze for half a heartbeat. Conversations kept going, but I felt a flicker of eyes just enough to remind me what I looked like. The older man being told what to do in front of 30 people. I nodded and went back to the kitchen. Marlene's face tightened. "Trevor, your father isn't the help." Trevor smiled like she'd made a cute joke. "He's fine. Right, Dad?" I didn't answer. I filled the bucket. When I came back, Trevor was mid-story with 2 coworkers and a cousin. "So the client wanted this ridiculous cantilever design," he said, laughing, tossing around technical words like confetti. I had to explain gravity is real, but hey, this is why they pay me the big bucks. Admiring laughter rippled. A coworker whistled. "This place must cost a fortune. Gold Coast isn't cheap." Trevor shrugged, like money bored him. $8,500 a month. Worth it. You pay for quality." Tiffany slid her arm around him. "He works so hard. We deserve this." 8,500. The number hung in the air like a tuxedoed lie. Because I knew what the lease actually said. I knew who owned the unit. I knew whose name was on the registration downstairs. And watching Trevor grin by those windows, I realized something worse than arrogance. He believed it. Maybe I'd wanted him to. Maybe that was where I'd failed him. There's a special kind of humiliation that comes when you're too proud to defend yourself. Dessert hit the table around 10. My pumpkin pie, Trevor's favorite. I cut slices, plated them, served them like a man earning his place in his own child's home. Trevor didn't even look up. Marlene finally couldn't take it. "Ray," she said louder than necessary, "sit down. You made all this and you haven't eaten." The room quieted. Not silent, just aware. Trevor set his fork down with deliberate calm, the way people do when they're about to make sure everyone knows they're in charge. "Actually," he said, standing, "since we're all here, it's time we had an honest conversation." My stomach sank. Not because I didn't know what was coming, but because I did. He looked around for the kind of attention that feels like power. "Dad," he said, voice smooth, "you've been living with us for 3 years. We love having you here." Tiffany nodded beside him, lips tight, like she'd rehearsed the expression. "But," Trevor continued, "Tiffany and I are trying to build our own life. And honestly, it's hard to do that with you here." My mouth went dry. "What are you saying?" Trevor's tone stayed polite, almost professional, like he was terminating an employee. "If you want to keep living here, You need to start contributing. Pay rent, like any adult. The word adult stung more than everything else. Or, he added, it might be time for you to find your own place. Something more appropriate for your situation. 30 guests. 30 faces. Some stared at plates. Some watched like it was entertainment. A few nodded, like Trevor was delivering a brave lecture on boundaries. No one defended me. Not one person. My son stood there waiting for approval, and something in my chest cracked quietly, like ice giving way. Sometimes the moment you stop fighting is the moment you start winning. I stood slowly. 62 years of labor made themselves known in my knees, my shoulders, my breath. Trevor blinked, like he expected an argument. I didn't give him one. You're right, I said softly. His eyebrows lifted. I am, I repeated. It's time I stopped taking advantage of your generosity. Tiffany's eyes widened. She hadn't expected compliance. Not that fast. Trevor opened his mouth. Dad, I didn't mean tonight. We can talk later. But I had already made my decision. I looked at him, the boy I taught to ride a bike, the teenager I helped through algebra, the young man I cheered for when he graduated and realized he couldn't see any of it in me. He only saw the old man in the back room. I understand, I said. Perfectly. Then I walked down the hallway. Behind me, someone cleared their throat, trying to restart the party. Someone asked if anyone wanted more pie. Laughter tried to patch the awkwardness. But the moment was already broken. Inside my small bedroom, I closed the door. And for the first time in 3 years, I didn't feel like a guest. I felt like a father who finally understood he'd raised a son who didn't know what anything cost. Not money. Cost. The most dangerous kind of anger is the kind that stays quiet. I pulled a duffel bag from the closet, packed 3 changes of clothes, my toothbrush, and the framed photo of my late wife, Diane. She was smiling in it, taken at a little Italian place in Wicker Park on our 20th anniversary. Her hair just starting to silver, her eyes bright enough to make you believe the world was kinder than it was. Diane used to say, teach him the value of work, Ray. Don't hand him a life he didn't earn. I thought I was teaching him humility. Turns out, I'd been feeding entitlement with a spoon. Through the door, I heard Tiffany hiss. Did you have to do that tonight? Trevor's voice came back sharp. He needs to understand reality. Reality. I zipped the bag. I didn't slam doors. I didn't make a scene. I walked out quietly, past leftover pie and wine glasses, past 30 people pretending not to see me. No one stopped me, not even my son. The elevator ride down felt endless. The lobby smelled like pine and expensive perfume. The doorman nodded at me like I belonged. Trevor believed I did. That was the strangest part. He believed I belonged because he'd built it. He had no idea the penthouse was part of the empire I'd spent decades building brick by brick. And stepping into the cold Chicago night, I made myself a promise. If Trevor wanted me to pay rent, I would. Not with money, with consequences. When a man has nothing left to lose, he finally tells the truth to himself. I didn't go far. I went to my real apartment in Lincoln Park, the one Trevor didn't know existed. A modest 1-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a brick walk-up. No doorman, no skyline view, just quiet streets, bare trees, and a corner store that stayed open late. I climbed the stairs with my duffel bag and unlocked the door. Silence greeted me like an old friend. This place was mine. A worn couch, a small kitchen table, shelves of real estate books, a file cabinet full of tax records and deeds. And above the couch, Diane's photo watched me. People think building wealth is complicated. It isn't. It's brutal, but simple. Spend less than you earn. Buy what others avoid. Fix what others abandon. Wait when others panic. Diane and I started with $10,000 saved instead of vacations, saved instead of new cars. Friends told us life was too short to sacrifice comfort. We bought a 4-flat in Logan Square when everyone called it going downhill. We fixed it ourselves, paint under our fingernails, drywall dust in our hair. Then we bought another. And another. Over time, Hawthorne Holdings grew to 32 buildings across Chicago. A portfolio big enough to make people's eyes widen, big enough that I stayed behind the scenes on purpose. Trevor thought I was broke. He thought he was saving me, and I let him believe it because I thought humility would protect him from arrogance. Instead, it gave him permission to forget gratitude. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just paperwork. On December 26th, Chicago felt half asleep, still digesting holiday leftovers. I drove downtown anyway. Hawthorne Holdings' office sat high in a glass tower in the Loop. Publicly, the company belonged to our CEO, Mark Ellison, the smiling face on photos and handshake deals. I preferred shadows. Mark was waiting with our attorney, Serena Brooks. Both stood when I entered, their expressions careful. Mark's voice held concern. "Ray, are you sure?" "I've never been more sure," I said, and surprised myself by meaning it. Serena turned her laptop toward me. Trevor's lease agreement. Monthly rent, $2,900. Market rate, $8,500. Discount, 66%. The luxury penthouse Trevor bragged about? We owned the unit. The discount was my quiet gift. Serena clicked again. A black Cadillac CT5. Registered to Hawthorne Holdings. Authorized user, Trevor Hawthorne. Insurance and maintenance paid. Then the credit card. American Express, Platinum. Primary holder, Raymond Hawthorne. Authorized user, Trevor Hawthorne. 6 months of spending, $61,400. Fine dining, designer shopping, weekend trips, networking expenses that looked like luxury. Mark leaned back, exhaling slowly. If we pull everything at once, he's going to lose the life he thinks he has. I met his eyes. No, he's going to lose what he didn't earn. Serena slid 3 documents across the table, clean and final. Lease non-renewal effective January 31st. Vehicle return request effective immediately. Credit card cancellation upon submission. I picked up the pen. Mark tried one more time. "He's your son." "That's exactly why," I said. And I signed. The moment your child's safety net disappears, you find out who they really are. On December 27th at 9 a.m., Serena sent the emails. 3 messages written in corporate language. Cold. Routine. No mention of me. No dad. Just a company protecting its assets. Then I waited. 2 hours later, Mark called. He's panicking. I sat in my Lincoln Park apartment, coffee untouched, watching gray waves slap the shoreline. "What's he doing?" I asked. "Calling the property manager. Asking questions. He thinks it's a mistake." "Good," I said. "Keep it faceless." The next morning, Mark called again. Repo team picked up the Cadillac. I pictured it, Trevor in a suit, his voice rising, insisting it was his car. "How'd he react?" I asked. "Like he got punched," Mark said. He kept saying, "There's been a mistake, but the registration is ours." At 2 p.m., Serena called. Tiffany's card got declined. She called the bank. They told her the primary holder canceled it. "Let her ask questions," I said, and hung up. Across the street, a father was teaching his daughter to ride a bike. She fell. He picked her up. She fell again. He picked her up again. Sometimes love is letting them fall. Diane told me that once when Trevor struggled in college. "Don't rescue him every time," she said. "Let him learn to stand." Now, I was finally listening, even though it hurt like hell. A spoiled life collapses fast when it was built on someone else's foundation. On December 29th, my phone rang early. It was my father-in-law, Walter, Diane's dad, Trevor's grandfather. Trevor showed up at my door, Walter said. Desperate, defensive, asking if someone's sabotaging him. My chest tightened anyway. "Plans don't protect you from pain." "What did you tell him?" I asked. "Nothing yet," Walter said. "But he's shaking, Ray. He keeps saying he did everything right." I looked out at the pale morning sun, turning the lake dull gold. "Tell him," I said. Walter went quiet. "Tell him the penthouse was never his. Tell him the rent wasn't what he bragged about. Tell him the car was company property. Tell him the card was mine." Walter exhaled. "That's going to destroy him." "I know," I whispered. "But he needs to hear it from family. Not from me. Not yet." That night, Walter called again. "I told him," he said, voice low, "and I told him you left because you were hurt." There was a pause, heavy as stone. "Tiffany left him an hour ago," Walter added. "Packed a suitcase. Said she didn't sign up for broke life." My eyes burned. Not with satisfaction. With grief. Because as much as Trevor deserved the lesson, he was still my son. Knowing he was alone didn't feel like victory. It felt like standing in wreckage. "Still," I forced the words out. "Good," I said, voice unsteady. "That's where learning starts. When comfort disappears, you find out whether someone has character or just accessories." January crawled by like bitter wind. I didn't call Trevor. Not when Mark told me Trevor moved into a small place in Pilsen. Not when Walter said Trevor started riding the CTA to work. Not when my sister Linda called, voice shaking. Ray, he looks exhausted. Tired is good, I told her, even though my throat tightened. Tired means he's working. Linda sniffed. He's different. Different how? Quieter, she said. Humbler. Like he finally understands the world doesn't owe him anything. After we hung up, I sat at my small table and opened a drawer. Trevor's birth certificate, his acceptance letter to Northwestern, a photo of him at 8 years old holding a toy hammer, grinning like the world was his playground. I traced the photo with my thumb. Where did I lose you, kid? Then Diane's voice came back, sharp in memory. Teach him what real wealth is, she'd whispered in the hospital. Not money. Character. I promised her, and now I was keeping it, even if it was killing me. If you're still here with me, leave a comment. Where are you watching from right now, and what time is it where you are? I want to know who's walking through this story with me tonight. The hardest part of tough love is resisting the urge to rescue them when they finally start to change. In February, Mark knocked on my office door with a small smile. He got hired, Mark said. Entry-level coordinator for an affordable housing nonprofit on the South Side. Salary? I asked, already doing the math. About $3,100 a month, Mark replied, half of what he used to claim. I nodded slowly. How's he taking it? Mark's smile deepened. He accepted without negotiating. That hit me harder than I expected. The Trevor from the penthouse would have scoffed at non-profit. He would have treated the South Side like something to avoid. But this Trevor, this version, said yes, like he was grateful to be allowed back into reality. Months passed. Mark sent updates. Trevor showed up early, stayed late, took the train, packed lunches, no flashy posts. In fact, he deleted most of the old photos, champagne, designer jackets, captions about grind culture. I checked sometimes, when I couldn't stop myself, and every time I wanted to call, my finger hovered over his name then froze. Because if I stepped in too early, I'd steal the growth. So I sat in silence, night after night, listening to the radiator hiss, staring at Diane's photo, and praying I hadn't made a mistake that would cost me my son forever. You don't realize how much you miss someone until you see them from a distance, and they don't look back. Late May, I drove through Pilsen and told myself it was business. We had a property nearby. That was my lie. The truth was I needed to see him. I spotted Trevor on 18th Street walking toward the blue line. No suit, jeans and a plain t-shirt, a backpack over one shoulder. His face thinner, his posture different, less swagger, more purpose. He looked lighter, like he'd dropped something heavy he didn't know he was carrying. I pulled over and watched him disappear down the stairs into the station. Then I sat in my car and cried. Not small tears. The kind that make your chest hurt. The kind you hide from everyone. I miss you, I whispered. But I'm proud of who you're becoming. I drove home without going back. Sometimes love looks like distance. Sometimes it looks like a father watching from across the street because he doesn't trust his own voice to stay steady. I wanted to run after him and say, I'm sorry. But sorry isn't always enough, not when the root problem is entitlement, and the deeper lesson is identity. So I swallowed my love like medicine, and told myself again, not yet. The moment your child starts caring about people instead of appearances, you know the lesson is taking root. In late June, Mark forwarded me an email. Subject, Investor Meeting Southside Homes Initiative. Presenter, Trevor Hawthorne. Project Coordinator. Date, July 18. Location, Hawthorne Holdings, Conference Room B. My breath caught. Trevor didn't know I owned Hawthorne Holdings. To him, Mark was the boss, and I was just Dad, the man who supposedly needed help. Now Trevor was walking into our conference room to pitch an affordable housing project. To me, I stared out at the lake for a long time after reading it. All right, Di, I whispered. Let's see if he's ready. July 18 arrived too fast. At 2 p.m., I sat at the far end of the conference table in a gray suit, posture straight, face neutral. Mark leaned in. You sure? I nodded once. If I spoke, my voice might crack. The door opened. Trevor walked in with a laptop under his arm. He froze when he saw me. Just a second, eyes widening, step faltering. Then he recovered. That recovery mattered more than anything. It meant he'd learned how to stand in discomfort without collapsing. Mark stood. Everyone, this is Trevor Hawthorne. He'll present the Southside Homes Initiative. Trevor's gaze landed on me last. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just watched. Nothing reveals growth like competence, real competence. not confidence borrowed from money. Trevor began, voice steady. Good afternoon. Southside Homes Initiative. 110 units, $9.1 million budget. Our CFO, Nadia Park, leaned forward. Cost per unit? Trevor didn't blink. 82,000. Sale price target, 95. Still below market for new builds in Cook County. Target buyers? She pressed. Working families, he said. Household income 35 to 60,000. Teachers, nurses, transit workers, people squeezed between high rent and limited assistance. I watched him answer cleanly, no bragging, no fluff, just facts and planning. A board member frowned. Why the South Side? Higher risk. Trevor paused, then spoke softer. Because I met a kid named Malik, he said. He's 11. He wants to be an architect, but he's grown up watching eviction notices show up like junk mail. Stable housing changes everything. My jaw tightened. That's him, I thought, not the man who bragged about rent he didn't pay. Nadia flipped a page. Timeline? 16 months, Trevor said. Break ground in September. Completion by January next year. Permits in motion. Community partners secured. He closed his laptop, looked around the room. 6 months ago, he said quietly, I thought success meant a penthouse and a company car. His eyes found mine. Then I lost everything. The room went still. And I learned the best things I build aren't buildings, he continued. They're relationships, people, trust. Something cracked in my chest, not pain. Hope. The deepest test isn't whether they can lead, it's whether they'll sacrifice. I cleared my throat. The sound felt too loud. How much of your own money are you putting in? I asked. Trevor didn't flinch. Everything I've saved since February, he said. $12,000. $12,000 on that salary. After rent. After starting over. It wasn't impressive because it was huge. It was impressive because it was earned. Mark glanced at the room. Motion to approve? I lifted my hand. Then Nadia. Then Serena. One by one, the board followed. Congratulations, Mark said, smiling at Trevor. Project approved. And you'll step into project director. Trevor's shoulders loosened, relief and disbelief mixed together. He shook hands around the table. When he reached me, he offered his hand carefully. I took it. His palm was calloused. Not the soft hand of a man who demanded rent from his father. A working hand. Thank you, sir, Trevor said quietly. Sir, not Dad. He still didn't know. You earned it, I replied. He nodded and left the room, and I sat there fighting the urge to run after him, because the lesson wasn't finished yet. He still needed to choose me, not because of money, but because I was his father. Sometimes you don't realize time is running out until your body forces you to listen. 2 days after the meeting, I approved the funding. Then I went home and sat alone in the dark. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt afraid. What if I waited too long? What if silence hardened into something permanent? In August, the first chest pain came sharp, like a fist pressing into my sternum. It passed. I ignored it. Then it came back. You're 62, I told my reflection in the mirror. How much time do you think you have? Still, I didn't go to a doctor. Stress, I told myself. Indigestion. On August 15, Linda called. Have you talked to him yet? She asked. Not yet. Her voice softened, then turned firm. Pride is a lonely companion, Ray. I looked around my apartment, one chair, one coffee cup, Diane's photo watching me like she already knew. I know, I whispered. Then do something, Linda said. I promised I would. But I didn't. I kept staring at Trevor's contact, thumb hovering over his name. Fear stopped me every time. What if he didn't answer? What if he answered and hated me? Then on August 17 at 9 p.m., the pain hit like a truck. My left arm went numb. The room tilted. My phone slipped from my hand and clattered on the floor. And the last thought before everything went black tasted like regret. Please. Not before I tell him I love him. A hospital room has a way of stripping life down to what actually matters. I woke under fluorescent lights. The smell of antiseptic in my nose. A doctor checked a monitor. Mr. Hawthorne, you had a stress-induced cardiac episode. You're stable, but you need rest. What time? I croaked. 11:20 p.m. I tried to sit up. Pain sparked through my chest. My son, I rasped. Call my son. The doctor held me down gently. Let's stabilize you first. No, I said, voice shaking. Call him. A nurse stepped forward. What's his number? I recited it from memory. Then I stared at the ceiling. listening to machines beep like they were counting something I didn't want to measure. Minutes dragged. When the nurse returned, she held out my phone. "We reached him," she said softly. "He's on his way." My throat tightened. 8 months. 8 months of silence. And now, when it might be too late, he was coming. At 12:43 a.m., the door opened. Trevor stood in the doorway, breathing hard like he'd run the whole way. His eyes were red. "Dad," he whispered. He crossed the room in 3 steps and stopped beside my bed, staring at the wires, the IV, the oxygen tube. His voice cracked. "I'm sorry. For everything." The heart monitor sped up, and in that sterile room, I realized the truth that money can't fix. You can't buy back time. An apology is powerful, but the truth behind it is what changes a life. Trevor pulled a chair close and sat down, gripping the bed rail like he was afraid I'd disappear. "Why did you do it?" he asked. "Why let me think I built everything?" I took a slow breath. My chest hurt, but not just from the episode. "Because I wanted you to believe you could," I said. Tears slid down his cheeks. He didn't wipe them away. "Your whole life," I continued, "people whispered you succeeded because of my money. Teachers, friends, strangers. Every time I saw doubt in you." Trevor swallowed hard. "I wanted you to know in your bones you can build something real," I said. "That your talent is yours. Your work is yours. Your heart, if you choose to use it, is yours." Trevor's voice broke. "But you let me humiliate you." "I did," I admitted. He stared at me like he was trying to reconcile the father he thought he knew with the man in front of him. "I didn't want you to love me because I could give you things," I whispered. "I wanted you to love me because I'm your father." Trevor's face crumpled. He covered his mouth, shoulders shaking. "I wasn't the man I thought I was," he whispered. "No," I said gently. "You're better now. You're real." He reached for my hand. His grip was warm and desperate. I felt the calluses again, proof he'd been carrying his own weight. "Mom would be proud," I said. Trevor let out a sound between a laugh and a sob. "I hope so. I know so," I replied. And for the first time since Christmas Eve, the silence between us didn't feel like punishment. It felt like healing. Real change isn't proven by words. It's proven by what they do when nobody's watching. Trevor didn't leave that night. He fell asleep in the chair beside my bed, still holding my hand like letting go meant losing me. When I woke at sunrise, he was still there. Recovery was slow. And in that slowness, Trevor showed up. Every Tuesday and Thursday, like clockwork. Sometimes with takeout, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just with stories permits, contractors, families at community meetings. He didn't defend the past. He didn't blame anyone. He listened more than he spoke. In September, Southside Homes broke ground. Trevor texted me a photo of himself in a hard hat beside a crew. Another photo showed Malik holding a toy shovel, grinning like the future was something you could build. In November, I offered Trevor the penthouse back. "It's sitting empty," I told him. He shook his head. "I like Pilsen, Dad. It's real." That's when I knew the lesson stuck. Not because he rejected luxury, because he chose honesty over image. In early December, Trevor called after his first paycheck as project director. "I did the math," he said quietly. "This is what I can actually afford. No discounts, no help, just my work." I closed my eyes, relief washing through me. "That's the best kind of pride," I told him. "Not arrogance, earned pride. The best ending isn't a perfect life, it's a repaired heart." Christmas Eve came again 1 year after the night Trevor told me to pay rent or get out. This time, we were in my Lincoln Park apartment. No chandelier, no staged photos. Just a small tree in the corner, pizza boxes on the table, and wind tapping the window. Trevor handed me an envelope. Inside was a check. "1 year's rent," he said quietly. $8,500 a month, times 12, plus back rent. He couldn't meet my eyes. "I want to make it right," he whispered. I stared at the number money that once would have thrilled him, money that now looked like guilt. I folded the check, then tore it. Once more, and again. Trevor's head snapped up. "Dad, you don't owe me rent," I said. "You never did." The torn pieces fell onto the table like confetti from a life we didn't want anymore. Trevor's voice cracked. "But I cost you so much." "You didn't cost me anything," I said gently. "You taught me something too." He frowned. "I almost waited too long," I admitted. I let pride keep me silent until my heart forced me to stop. Trevor's eyes filled. I patted the couch. "Sit." He did. And in that quiet apartment, with snow drifting past the glass. I told him the truth I should have said sooner. Real wealth isn't the penthouse. It isn't the car. It isn't the buildings or the portfolio, I said. He swallowed. It's this, I continued, gesturing between us. A son who comes back. A relationship rebuilt. A man transformed. Trevor leaned his head against my shoulder like he used to when thunderstorms scared him. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know, I said. And I love you. We ate pizza in silence and watched the snow fall. No grand speeches. Just a father and son. Finally home. Now, I want to ask you, what's the most important lesson your father or grandfather ever taught you? Drop it in the comments. And if this story stirred something in you, tell me what part hit you the hardest, because you never know who needs your words tonight.